It's time for Bringing the Heat with Bryan Nolen. What is up, ladies and gentlemen? Trey, Lyle filling in for Bryan Nolen this week on Bringing the Heat with Bryan Nolen. Coming up, Anthony Damcott will join us later, reacting to everything at Daytona, plus a little bit about the playoff cut line, a little bit about the 2025 schedule that's being reported by The Athletic, and a little bit about the comments of Kyle Busch. But first, Steve Leffew was in Milwaukee this past weekend along with Michael Massey, but Steve had a conversation with Milwaukee's own Ty Majeski. So we'll put Ty into the Inferno right now as Ty Majeski heads into the Inferno. Now it's time for
Ty Majeski just dominated this race a year ago. Saw the win in sight only to lose it. As he makes his way around this racetrack, checker flag in the air. Ty Majeski makes it 2 in a row and wins the season finale.
To go into the Inferno with Bryan.
Steve Leffew here, frontstretch.com. I'm with Ty Majeski. Ty, thanks for your time today. Welcome to your home state, my home state as well. Glad to have racing in Milwaukee. I think we should just get into the playoff situation that we're in right now, starting this weekend. There's a little bit of a big three happening now. It's been the Corey and Christian show, and I think you've kind of got yourself into that now. So we're going to have, I'm sure, some tough racing here the next 7 weeks. What's your relationship like with those two guys, and how do you feel that you're going to race each other throughout the playoffs?
Yeah, I don't think that anything changes. Christian and Corey are both good racers. They have good backgrounds at the late model levels, and obviously two talented guys. I've raced with each of them for quite some time. So I remember racing Christian for I think the 2016 Snowball Derby, and he ended up winning it. I was third. So been racing with these two a long time. Corey back in super late models as well. So, but anything can happen, right? I don't want to just talk about those two guys because you just never know what can happen in the playoffs. So, a lot of these guys are, they're in the playoffs for a reason, and each one of these guys can bust off a win each and every weekend. So we got to be prepared to battle, Corey and Christian to potentially, there's no shoe in that we're going to be the 3 in Phoenix. So we just have to take it one race at a time and make sure we put full races together, minimizing our mistakes, which we made the last 2 weeks. So we got to get rid of those and put ourselves in better spots in the middle stages of the race.
As we go through the playoffs, I'm sure there's going to be some tough racing, some close finishes, as there always is. There was a lot of controversy a couple weeks ago in Richmond in the Cup Series. A lot of people are trying to figure out what is the line that can or can't be crossed. What is your opinion on the last lap? What is the line? What's fair game and what's not?
Yeah, I don't know. I think there's just depends on what your code is as a driver. I think we've seen maybe the code shift over the course of the last 2 or 3 years. I know how I would handle those situations, and I think it's a little bit more old school. So yeah, I'll just leave it at that. I think I want to lay my head down at night and be proud of how I race people, and I think that if everybody would do that, I think that'd go a long way. So yeah, just excited to have another opportunity to chase the championship. I think there's a lot of great racetracks coming up for us, and playoffs lay out pretty well for our 98 team, so I'm excited to make another run at it.
Speaking of making a run, coming off back-to-back wins right now, and you're kind of thought of as a short track ace, but when you look at the results, you were second at Atlanta, you were third at Coda, you were fourth at Gateway, you were fifth at Darlington. So to be the champion this year, in what area or what type of track do you need to find the most gain on the field in order to be able to come out on top?
Well, I think that's one of the strengths of our team is no matter the type of track, I feel like we have a chance to win. You mentioned some finishes at all the different types of racetracks. Obviously Daytona and Talladega are the biggest wild cards. We've had tremendous speed at all those places, but we can't ever seem to put ourselves in position to win those races. And those are the races I'm probably the most uncomfortable at, are the super speedways. So to answer your question, I would say Talladega. That's obviously the biggest wild card going into the playoffs for everybody. That's the common answer between there and Martinsville. So with that being the first round or the first race of the second round, we're going to kind of know where everybody stands going into Homestead and Martinsville. So that's obviously going to dictate how you approach those two races, depending on how your Talladega goes. So I would say, Talladega is the biggest wild card for all of us, and the race that we probably need to focus on the most at having a solid finish at.
Yeah, anything goes at Talladega, it seems. You never know what you're going to get. Looking back on your career, Ty, you were with the Roush Pipeline 2017 and 2018. And then you kind of had to regroup starting in 2022 after a couple of years where you're obviously a busy racer, but in the top 3 series, not as much participation. So how did those 3 years outside of the top 3 series kind of change your mentality or change you as a race car driver or as a human being?
Yeah, I think, I did run full time for Nice in 2020. So that was sort of a fill-in year. At least 2019 was a fill-in year. Then I went to Nice in 2020, ran full time for them, and then I got let go right before the playoffs started. So I ran 16 races for them that year, and I didn't know what I was going to do. Ran well in some late model races the off season of 2020, and Duke stuck his neck out for me, and Duke and Rhonda gave me an opportunity to go up and be an engineer at ThorSport, and with a combination of 3 or 4 races, and I made the most of that opportunity and landed a full-time deal with ThorSport, and it's really been a dream come true of mine to find a home with the team. That's something that I was searching for my whole career, is just trying to find a home and a group of people that believe in me, and I feel like everybody at ThorSport does, and that goes a long way. So you got to believe in, I have to believe in my team, and the team has to believe in me, and that's how you get the results out on the racetrack. So love where I'm at with Duke and Rhonda, and they have a great group of people up there, and having a blast racing with them.
So you really perfectly led into kind of the next thing I was going to ask you, which is with the Truck Series, you got 23 race weekends. We know you love to race at the local tracks. You were on that fast track in the past years ago to move up. We look at guys like Grant and Matt Crafton, and is this where you want to be long term, or do you still have aspirations to keep climbing the ladder? You're still a young man. Happy birthday, by the way, 30 recently, right?
Yeah, that's getting old now. I'm racing late model guys that are half my age, so yeah, time flies. But like I said, I'm having the time of my life right now, racing with ThorSport, and there's something to be said about showing up to the racetrack, whether it's a late model or a truck, knowing you have a shot to win. And some of my former opportunities, I started to not like racing as much because it was just, I like to win. I'm a competitive guy, and like I said, having a chance to win goes a long ways, and I don't know that I would put myself in another situation where I didn't have a chance to win with any team that I was with. So definitely happy with where I'm at with ThorSport. My career ended in 15 years at ThorSport. I would be incredibly happy. So just got to keep performing and keep putting myself in good positions to run well in races and put good seasons together, and hopefully my tenure in NASCAR lasts a long time.
Are you confirmed? Are you going to be back with ThorSport next year? Is that a done deal, or are you still working on that? A lot of these things are year to year.
Yeah, right now I'm just working on this season, on the playoffs. You just never know what situation you're going to be in come the off season. So my focus is on running as well as I can in these playoffs and bringing a championship back home to Sandusky.
Awesome. Well, good luck today and on this weekend at your home track. This has been Ty Majeski, Steve Leffew, frontstretch.com. Thanks, Ty.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much to Steve and Ty for that interview. Want to thank all the work that Steve did this past weekend at Milwaukee with Michael Massey. And but now let's bring in Anthony Damcott with What's Still Hot.
What's still hot? It's time to upgrade you on the latest news in NASCAR.
What's still hot? Yes, time to upgrade you. Joining me now, he was at Daytona this past weekend. Anthony Damcott at Anthony Damcott. Of course, tying it all together, he's our trucks guy, for frontstretch.com. So we got the truck driver, we got our trucks guy. It's tying all together here in beautiful passion. But he was, of course, in Daytona this past weekend. And Anthony, hope you're doing well. Glad to have you on. But let's dive right into it. Harrison Burton gets the win at Daytona. Very, very shocking. He is currently last amongst the full-time drivers in points, jumps from 34th to 16th as a minimum this year. But I don't really want to talk about that. I think we've covered a lot about it in the Happy Hour podcast. We obviously need to preview once again this cut line. 21 points separate Chris Buescher and Bubba Wallace. I think it's 27 to Ross Chastain. If you want to throw Ty Gibbs at, I believe, plus 36 off the top of my head right now. Ultimately at Darlington this past, who do you think will get that final playoff spot, or could we have a surprise winner at Darlington? I know Eric Jones may be the person that everyone's going to look at, and he's really good at Darlington. He's won the Southern 500, and but ultimately, do you think Chris Buescher gets that final playoff spot, or are you looking at someone else?
I do think it's Chris Buescher. I think if you go back to his performance in May, I mean, he arguably could have, would have, should have won that race before Tyler Reddick dive bombed him and wrecked both of them. So I think if RFK can keep that performance coming into Darlington this time around, arguably in a bigger race with the Southern 500, I think it's Chris Buescher's playoff spot to lose, especially already having a 21-point cushion over Bubba Wallace. I think it's going to be hard for Bubba to overcome that unless he can get stage points or the 17 team just totally collapses, which I don't want to wish that upon anybody, but I think that, it's going to be tough for anyone outside the cut line to win. Like you said, Eric Jones could play spoiler in that regard. We could obviously, we've seen crazier at Darlington. We've seen, I think back to 2011 with Regan Smith, with I believe they made a 2-tire call that won in the race. There's so many variables at Darlington that anything could happen. But if we don't get a new winner, I think it's going to be hard to take Chris Buescher out of the top 16, barring some total collapse from the team.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. I think it's between those two, Chris and Bubba. I could realistically see a path where Bubba Wallace gets it done. Let's say he gets fifth and fifth in the two stages. Well, that's 10 points. Well, 11 is a lot easier to make up in the final stage than 21. Mm-hmm. So if he can get it between, it's kind of like, if you want to use a basketball analogy, it's like if you're down 20 at halftime, if you can get it to single digits by the fourth quarter, you have a shot. And it feels kind of that way. We'll know about the third stage where I think everyone sits in terms of that playoff cut line. And I'd say the same thing for Ross. I just don't see the speed out of trackouts at Daytona to this point. But other headlines throughout the week, Jordan Bianchi at The Athletic. And I think by the time this comes out on Wednesday, it'll be fully announced, the NASCAR Cup Series schedule, but there's no doubt to deny them. But the first big headline is obviously sort of the return to Mexico City. The Cup will make its debut in Mexico City. This will be the June 15th weekend. What was your reaction to that? Obviously, talked a lot about it on Happy Hour as well, but Mexico City, probably the big eye catcher from the pre-playoffs part of the 2025 schedule.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing I can think of is I think it's great that we've decided to go back international. Really, since the COVID-19 pandemic, we haven't had anybody go north or south of the U.S. border, just because of border restrictions and whatnot. Because the trucks, they used to go up to Canada with the Canadian Tire Motorsport Park all the time. And then before that, it was obviously the Xfinity Series in Montreal. But we haven't seen any international racing since then because of one reason or another. So I think it's good from the perspective of international racing that we've expanded back into that again. And I think it'll be interesting to see how the Cup Series does at Mexico City. Because, yes, the Xfinity Series has raced at Mexico City before. And it'll be interesting to see how not just the Cup Series, but this next-gen car will race at Mexico City. And obviously, on the other hand, I think, good for Daniel Suarez. He finally gets a home race which I think Mexico City in that regard would have been the better choice for an international race than going to Canada, just because we don't have a Canadian driver, at least a Canadian-born driver in the Cup Series field. We do have a Mexican-born driver in the Cup Series field, so I think it's cool that he gets a home race. I'm sure the 99 fans will come out in droves next year, so it'll be fun to see. It'll be fun to see Daniel's Amigos come out in full force at his home race. And I think all around, I think going to like I said, going to an international race, but trying something new and going to Mexico City instead of going to like Montreal or Canadian Tire, I think it'll be interesting, and I'm excited to see how that's gonna play out.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's gonna be a fun race. It'll be an interesting race. It'll be on Prime Video, so all these factors that lead into it. A couple other notes about the schedule. I really want to focus on the playoffs. Homestead, Watkins Glen, Atlanta's second day are back into the regular season. I think the big highlight there is Homestead leaving the playoffs, which in my opinion is unfortunate. Outside of maybe Kansas, it's the best track on the series. Replacing it, Darlington, obviously, but we kind of knew that. It was just a scheduling quirk this year that led to Daytona not being the playoff cutoff race. Gateway in New Hampshire, as well as Talladega moving to the round of 8 now to kick off that round. Overall, your thoughts on what NASCAR decided to do with the playoffs next year? Are you for it? Are you against it? How do you feel about Talladega moving to the round of 8? They kick out Homestead, kick out Watkins Glen, kick out the second Atlanta, and then insert Gateway, New Hampshire as the 2 new playoff races. Because I knew one had to go because the scheduling quirk this year with the Olympic break, but obviously 3 new playoff races next year.
Yeah, I mean, I think on the positive note, I think we keep applauding NASCAR for diversifying the schedule, changing it up. So in that regard, I think I applaud NASCAR for trying something new, trying to see maybe how Gateway works in the playoffs, trying to see how Talladega will work as a round of 8 race. But on the other hand, yeah, you say, I mean, I don't know if the best indicator of who the 4 best drivers are for the championship race, I don't know if putting them through Talladega to get there is the smartest idea, because take Denny Hamlin, for example. If he gets to the round of 8 and crashes out of Talladega along with 2 other favorites for the championship, say like Kyle Larson and maybe Tyler Reddick, and then we have 4 guys who we really didn't think were going to be the championship 4 in the championship 4, then there's a question of how then it comes back to, oh well, we need to emphasize more playoff points, XYZ. Why is Talladega in the round of 8? So I think there's a lot of negatives, or well, maybe not negatives, downsides to the reasoning for it. I actually do like Gateway in the playoffs. I think it'll be cooler in Illinois. I think if anyone out there reads my articles, I wrote one last week about the fan experience kind of being watered down and not ideal compared to, I keep going back to, but like pre-COVID. And one of those things is having these races in, 90-degree weather in the middle of the summer without like any access to water or little access to water. And like Gateway was one of those where it was like you were going to cook out there. So I think putting it in the fall in the playoffs might alleviate some temperature issues. I'm interested to see how that'll work. So I think overall, it's a long way of saying I applaud NASCAR for going bold with the schedule. But there are some things, and I didn't even touch on Homestead. I think, Homestead, should be a staple of the playoffs. Everyone wants to be the season finale or the season finale, and I can't blame them. But at the very least, it should be in the playoffs. So I think kudos to NASCAR for getting bold with the schedule and trying new things. But there are some things I think, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And I think that was, there are a couple things like Talladega in the round of 8 doesn't need to be there. Can be at the playoffs, just not round of 8. And then Homestead should be a playoff staple as well. So positives and negatives, I guess.
Yeah, it felt like Talladega was always in the perfect spot right before the Roval, because I think in the round of 12, it was the perfect chance to create that dramatic round where an upset could happen. Theoretically speaking, someone sneaking into the round of 8, like, you need to protect the round of 8 and obviously protect the championship. And having the championship a race where driver skill will be accounted for, and I just don't feel like Phoenix has ever been that. I know Homestead is. So that's why I'm always going to say Homestead should be the championship race. And you know, uh, I heard arguments about Kansas being it, and I think, like, yes, I wish, but as someone who lived in Kansas for a year in November, the wind and it wouldn't work
Not ideal, yeah.
because of wind and 20-mile-per-hour gust and cold temperatures. It just Homestead fits. You want an appealing air. Like, I get Phoenix, like Phoenix as an area, as a destination, as the way they've been able to appeal to fans for that championship race has done a really good job. It's just unfortunate they built a car that doesn't fit for the racing at Phoenix, and that's a discussion for another day. But I just think placing the the race of chance in the round of 8 eliminates kind of the reason it's in the playoffs, if that makes sense, because those 8 drivers are all theoretically is probably going to be at this point the 8 best of the year. You're not, I think of when Kurt Busch made the round of 8. I know that was at a different track, but you want that kind of moment, and the most likely places you're going to build that moment is the Roval and at Talladega. All right. Speaking of super speedway racing, unfortunately, Kyle Busch finishes second this past weekend, and he had some things to say about that end of the race.
Well, Tony, what angered you at the end of the race? What did you take issue with?
What the hell do you think I was mad about? Dumb little runs us clear down to the infield. He wants to about everybody else, and he's the one that drives like a little. I'm gonna bust his ass.
Thanks, Tony.
Thank you.
And short track races.
It's time for the sound bites of the week.
Yeah, certainly. We did a lot of things right. Had a lot of luck on our side, missing a lot of those wrecks, which was really cool. So glad to not get torn up and beat up, and more than I have already this year. So good day for the Cheddar's team. Everybody on this Chevrolet Camaro, they did a great job. Randall and the guys brought a fast car. So hated that I wasn't able to get the job done, but it is what it is.
Can you tell the fans what it's like at the end there when you're giving it your all? And I mean, there's nothing left to give, and the wind is out there, but.
Yeah, I mean, you're wide open. You're just doing everything you can. You're relying on everything happening behind you. And unfortunately, the 20, something happened off of 2 where he got swirled up and wasn't to my rear bumper. And then he was below the yellow line, and I don't know what was going on. But completely killed the bottom lane, and the outside just rolled. And, once we got to turn 4, there just wasn't enough energy with enough cars from behind me. I was relying on my own draft to try to pass the 21, and that happened so slow that Ray Charles could block that. So besides wrecking him, nothing to do.
Ray Charles could have blocked it. Interesting perspective from Kyle Busch. And I think we could go over the finish again. It seemed like there's conspiracy theories about Parker Retzlaff not helping the Chevrolet driver. And could he get backlash for that? There's so many avenues to go for it. But to me, watching it and reacting to it, outside of the Harrison Burton win, when it comes to Kyle Busch, it feels like he's just not going to win this year. Like, the streak is over. I don't think it needs to be a talking point at this point. Like, he just basically threw away. I don't want to say threw away because, again, Daytona, Talladega, there's so much chance in it. And now he's finished second at 2 of the super speedway races, won by a couple of inches. But I don't know about you, Anthony. I just feel like, and it's weird to say, like, I think it's okay to declare the streak dead. Like, I just don't trust RCR at this point. And, it feels like you're not going to have that good of luck at super speedway races over and over and over again. He's basically used it all and didn't get the win. So I think the streak's over.
Well, that's the magic of NASCAR, Trey. We can say the streak is over, but we also said that the idea of Harrison Burton winning was far-fetched, and he went out and did that at Daytona, and the entire infield couldn't believe that we saw the 21 on the top of the scoring pylon. So, I mean, I would agree. I mean, at this point, I mean, there are 11 races left, and they are good racetracks for Kyle Busch, but they aren't good racetracks for Richard Childress Racing. So we could say, yeah, it's dead. It's, you know, we're not going to see that streak be extended. But at the same time, you can never count out Kyle Busch. Kyle Busch is still Kyle Busch, regardless of who he's driving for, what kind of season he's having. And at the same time, I mean, let's not forget he finished fourth at Michigan the week before, and he went out there on pure speed and took the lead. He led like 24 laps or something, and then at Daytona he found himself with a shot to win again. So part of me maybe thinks that the momentum might be swinging in the right direction for the 18. Yeah, maybe he won't win and maybe he won't make the playoffs, but they're, you know, if they keep this momentum rolling, they might have a shot at winning, you know, in the round of 16. Again, it won't be in the playoffs, but, you know, they can play playoff spoiler and extend that streak. Who knows? So, you know, that's, like I said, that's the beauty of racing. I mean, we can all sit here and be like, hey, it's not going to happen. But I mean, the momentum is rolling for the 8 team. And, you know, again, we didn't think that 2 people outside the top 30 in points could win this year, and almost had a third with Zane Smith at Nashville. But, you know, that's just the nature of NASCAR. Anything can happen, and we can't count anything out.
Yeah. Well, way to be positive, as I was just making me sound even more negative than I was. But I appreciate your positive outlook as we head into the final thoughts segment and waving that checkered flag.
It's going to be a drag race all the way back to the start-finish line. No caution. They're side by side, right to the line. Big crash. Here they come. Checkered flag.
The checkered flag is out, and it's time for the final thoughts.
Anything you want to rant, rave, or review about Mr. Anthony Damcott, the floor is yours.
Yeah, I mean, so I'm going to try to make this as brief as possible, but it's me, so it probably won't be. I want to talk about we need to talk about the manufacturers for a second. You had touched on it just a smidge earlier, where Chevy is allegedly unhappy with Parker Retzlaff and the way he basically handled the finish of the race. Because I mean, let's face it, without the shove that he gave to the 21, Harrison Burton doesn't win that race. And, you know, now there's reports that Chevy's unhappy with him. And I guess, yes, I mean, I would, you know, obviously you'd rather have your manufacturer push your fellow manufacturer to the win. But this is Parker Retzlaff's second Cup start, and he had a shot to win the race. And let's face it, if they instructed him not to take, you know, not to help the 21, and if he did that, that would be borderline race manipulation. We would be having a conversation about, you know, well, you know, RCR Beard Motorsports, you know, that was race manipulation
again with RCR in a win.
Yes, exactly. You know, it would land RCR in more hot water. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't, but that conversation is open. And I think, again, Parker Retzlaff trying to make a name for himself in the Cup Series, he did what he had to do to win the race, because if he pushes the 21 clear and he gets clear of the 8-2, he dives to the bottom, and now he has that Chevy help to maybe push him to the win. It just didn't work out that way. So lay off the kid. I mean, I don't think he did anything wrong. In the same vein that I don't think Zane Smith did anything wrong when he left Front Row to join Trackhouse, because I've heard rumors that now that he's out of a ride with Spire and Trackhouse, that he might go back to the third Front Row car that's still open. We don't know who it is, but there's rumors that Ford might be unhappy with the way he left. It was different with Chase Briscoe because he's actively driving a Ford, and he went and did a Toyota announcement with a Toyota logo. I get that one, but they let Zane Smith go. They let him walk to find other opportunities. And now that opportunity that he got as a result of that has dried up, and he wants to come back, allegedly. Again, I have no insider information on that, but if he wants to come back and Ford's not going to let him, I don't see how that's Zane Smith's fault. And Ford has no drivers. No, their pipeline is beyond dead. So like, I feel like if they had
I can do it, I'll do it. I will.
Yeah,
do it. I
let's get Trey behind the wheel. Let's get Trey behind the wheel. The third FRM car. So, you know, it's frustrating to see that, like, one of their top prospects that they let go because there wasn't a ride available to him, now wants to come back and could probably do well with a team that he is familiar with. And there's allegedly some unhappiness there. These, manufacturers, let's calm down on these young guys. I mean, they just want to make a name for themselves with you guys. They want to put their names on the map, and let's calm down on the rookies, please.
Chill, man. Everyone chill is basically what Anthony is saying.
Let's all be friends.
Why can't we just get along? Why can't we be friends? All right, we don't need enough of that singing. Everyone's gonna turn it off. I want to mention. So it's funny watching racing with my family. It was my brother's birthday, and we all watched the race, and they watch. Some of them are, have watched their whole lives, but they're not like, I don't want to say they're casual, but they're not like knowing the headlines every week. I mean, I think you get the similar thing. Like they always ask me, the question. Yeah. And so it's fun. Two things that were funny about it, and it's going to lead to my overall point. Like it was funny explaining to them how, Josh Berry's the car that flips is literally replacing the guy who won the race. That was really funny. And then they brought up Lee Diffie, and he's like, I was like, why is this Brit calling this race? And I was like, well, this Aussie is the best in the business. And and I don't want to denigrate Rick Allen, and Mike Joy's a legend, but like hearing, as someone who's been I feel like a founding member of the Lee Diffie fan club, having him call that last set, like someone put it on Twitter, was like, he knew what was going to happen before it was going to happen. And his, perfect timing on the Harrison Burton run, the fact that he always seems to mention the sponsor, the manufacturer. It's like, it brings the imagery back that you get a lot from MRN, but you don't see in the booth anymore. And you want that imagery, and just saying, Jeff, your little boy did it. And it cuts to, Jeff Burton, just big fist pump, and like, and NBC did a really good job of comparing it to when, obviously having Dale Jarrett part of their team, when Ned Jarrett called, the Daytona 500 for Dale. You always think of, Michael Waltrip winning the Daytona 500, and you got Darrell Waltrip crying, and then obviously, unfortunately, what happens with Dale Earnhardt. But Lee Diffie is the gold standard in this. Like he made, having him do the Olympics and the 100-meter dash and everything that goes with that, he did a great job with that. And then now he's doing NASCAR. He's going to do the Cup Series. He's going to call these iconic moments, and it was so good because as a someone who went to journalism school, and the one thing is just tell the story as it happens, and he does that in a way that is so pure and so talented that you always just got to tip your hat. Like this was his first time in the Cup Series, and he's coming off of arguably the hardest job that a person can get in broadcasting, which is the Olympics, which is like the most watched event. And he's doing legitimately probably the most iconic event in the Olympics, like doing track and field, and then especially the 100-meter dash is like the most iconic event in the Olympics. It's either that or like insert Michael Phelps winning an Olympic gold or gymnastics. But he's coming off of that. He's been doing IndyCar. He hadn't done NASCAR in years, and he was so prepared and so perfect. And it was so refreshing to see and hear. And I don't want to like take away from Rick Allen. I think Rick Allen's style just got dry too quick. And I'm pumped to see how the rest of the season holds. All right, that will do it for this episode of Bring the Heat. Anthony is not doing Fire on the Fridays this week. That is going to Michael Massey. But anything else you want to plug before we get on out here?
Yeah, I'll be writing Trucking Thursdays this week, so I will be writing. And then of course I'll be not attending. I'll be attending my television to watch what happens in the Southern 500 this weekend. So
what I will be doing.
Yes, it'll be a fun weekend. College football's back. I'm so excited. Gonna be watching a lot of college football. So a lot of fun stuff coming up this week. But it's there's nothing better there's no better job in the world than being a guest on Bringing the Heat, of course, with
me,
Trey
not
Lyle.
Brian.
Yeah, right. Don't tell him I said that, though.
It's okay. We'll just leave that in. All right, that will do it for this episode. As always, you can follow me at Trey Lyle VT. Follow Anthony Damcott at Anthony Damcott. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/frontstretch. Subscribe to the Front Stretch podcast feed, wherever podcast network, wherever you get your podcast. Of course, coming up next, your best bets for the Southern 500. Maybe he's going to eat some cookout while it happens, because it is the Cookout Southern 500. Tino giving us our best for Through the Gears. Kittle Barnes will have all the reaction from Darlington with Stock Car Scoop this weekend. So check that all out this weekend. Thank you so much to Anthony. Thank you so much to all of you. Thanks so much to Steve and Ty Majeski for that interview at the start of the podcast. And thank you so much to you for listening to Bring the Heat with Bryan Nolen.
What's up? Michael Massey here, frontstretch.com. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button.